Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SA Smart Career Chats, where we have another expert with us today on our topic of water. So, with me is Dr. Davida Smyth, a newly tenured professor of microbiology at Texas A&M University in San Antonio, where, in addition to teaching labs and lecturing, she likes to mentor students and make microbiology cool and interesting. Her team of undergrads are studying bacteria in the built environment, buildings, rivers, and even wastewater. She is a senior sensor leadership fellow and Pulse fellow, as well as the deputy director of the National Center for Science and Civic Engagement. Welcome, Dr. Smyth. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Happy
Well, let's
Tuesday.
just jump right in. So, we're talking about the topic of water and health. And so, you're going to introduce this idea, which you're hinting at with this picture in your background. What is wastewater surveillance?
So wastewater surveillance is a kind of a tool that's been around for a long time, believe it or not, but it's been used right now during the COVID pandemic to surveil for bacteria and virus and all kind of nasty things in our wastewater.
Wow.
And it's been used across the country. It's been used across America, but also in different parts of the world as well. And so in essence, it's basically taking organisms that are in the wastewater and identifying them and giving that information back to the health authority so they can make decisions on that information.
And so, what can we learn when we get this data?
We learn all sorts of things. So for COVID in particular, it was really useful because everybody around the country was really worried about what was happening with the virus and how it was spreading, how it was transmitting. And as you know, everybody was going to get tested and everything else. And so you have to go and you have to get a swab taken and it takes time. But the thing about wastewater is that everybody poops. Everybody poops. So when everybody goes to the bathroom, they leave a signal in the bathroom in the poop that goes down into the sewers and it's collected in the wastewater plants. And then the folks in the wastewater plants collect that sewage water. And from that water, then we can isolate the virus from the water for all the people who were pooping in that region. So we know how many people in that region had the virus potentially. We know what type of virus it is because we can actually sequence the actual virus's genetic information. We can sequence it. So you know if it was a different variant or what have you. But we can do that at a huge scale. So like you can do it from like a dorm in a college all the way up to a region of a city or countries. So it's really useful and it's being used across the country to kind of inform what the health utilities and health authorities are doing to try and tackle the pandemic. So it's got a lot of use and I think it's going to be a hugely important tool for the future.
So, you're telling me that people can look at my poop and tell me if I have certain viruses or
Yeah,
other things that are wrong. That's pretty crazy.
that's cool.
So, how is this better than what's currently happening? You mentioned, how is this better than clinical surveillance?
It's better. It's not, it can't replace it necessarily, right? But it has a huge number of advantages over it, right? So as I said before, everybody poops. So if you think about it right now, all of you students who are listening today, who's going to get tested? Most of the people who are going to get tested are people who are perhaps not feeling very well, right? They're not
Right.
feeling so good, right? And they'll go in and get a test done. Or you might be told that you have to get tested for your job, or you have to get tested for school or whatever. But the problem with things like COVID is that a lot of people don't have any symptoms, right? They may not know, right? And that's part of the reason why the virus has spread so rapidly through populations. If you don't know you're sick, you're not necessarily going to go and get tested. And that's the main reason why we think it's better because you don't have to know you're sick in this situation because you're just going to the bathroom. So
Right.
the nice thing about this is it tells you all the people who are contributing the genetic information of the virus into the wastewater, whether they know it or not. So if you're an asymptomatic person, an asymptomatic carrier is what we call you, you may not know you're sick, but you have the virus, you'll shed it in your poop, and then we'll know that it's there. So it's hugely useful for that reason. And also because, frankly, trying to get individuals to get tested is difficult. You have to have all the materials, you have to have all the supplies, you have to have all the swabs, you have to have the testing centers and everything else. Wastewater surveillance doesn't require any of that. It does require the people to do the experiments in the lab, what have in that part of it. But the actual testing centers, that all goes away and it's not needed anymore. So for that reason, it's very much so cheaper and potentially less biased towards people who have symptoms. So it's better for that reason.
Well, I'm convinced. I mean, this sounds like a great way to go. So, why isn't this become a wide scale surveillance method?
Well, this is the thing. So, in essence, in the United States, we're actually making great progress because a lot of individual cities are doing it right now. So, I've been part of a team in New York City who've been doing it in New York City, but moving to San Antonio, I'm hoping to get us going down here. But Houston stands out in cities in the United States. They have an amazing system whereby they're actually informing schools. The schools know about how prevalent the virus is in comparison with what's going on in the wastewater. They've got this really great dashboard where you can go in and see how many cases there have been in schools, and then you can kind of correlate that information with what's happening in the wastewater. So it can be really useful to know. Like, think about it, folks. When you're going to class, you'd like to know how sick people are out there, and so you'll know. Well, maybe we should hold a Zoom class today. Maybe it's not a good idea for us to have classes in person. So I think it's going to be the next big thing, and the CDC has actually got a national system now that they're ramping up to do, and we're going to see more of it around the world. The issue will always be who has the money to do that, and who has the resources to do it, and who has the manpower to do it.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. So let's switch a little bit to what you're doing as a researcher. So can you tell us a little bit about your research and the program there at Texas A&M San Antonio?
Sure. So, my research, my background really was in bacteria. I'm a microbiologist and I study bacteria. And you use it all of this. I studied bacteria in cows and goats and sheep and chickens and all sorts of things. And then when I moved to America, I studied it in humans, and that was less cool because I'd much rather be studying cows really than humans. But no, but when I started working with undergrads in colleges, we couldn't really work with dangerous bugs anymore. So we kind of shifted our gears and we started looking at how we could understand how bacteria move around buildings and things like this. So we did a lot of work looking at elevator buttons and how bacteria and things like creep around in elevator buttons. And then we started looking at hand dryers and how hand dryers, when you're actually drying your hands, you can get contaminated with bacteria when you do that, which is very creepy. All work that my undergrads did. And then most recently, we've moved on to looking at bacteria in water, and that led us to COVID. So it was cool. It was a cool thing that happened because I've loads of friends who are also professors and who teach undergrad students, and we all got together and said, well, maybe we could help. And so we're all teachers predominantly, but we said we have the technology and we have students who could help with this problem. And so we all got together and we offered our services to New York and said, let's do this. And so in San Antonio, we don't have the same system here. We don't sequence the viruses from the water. So when I came down here, reached out to Saz and Sarah and to my college and other people and said, listen, is this something that you might be interested in doing? And we have some colleagues over at UTSA who are doing the quantifying of the virus, seeing if the virus is there or not. But I'd love to see if we have Delta or Omicron or any of these scary variants in the water. And then we would be able to inform our health partners in health as to what's happening in the water down here. So that's what we're going to be doing in Texas A&M and San Antonio, and we'll be recruiting students and looking for people to help us with that project.
Well, that's very exciting. And talking about careers and students, how are ways that students can get involved with water?
Oh, there's tons of ways. So I've been looking. So remember, I'm new and from out of town. So I've been looking at what you've been doing. But you've got Texas Stream Teams, for example, which is a way that you all can get involved with doing actual water quality testing in your own neighborhoods. So you can actually help gather samples and contribute those samples to the water quality network. And Sarah and Saz actually have really great data. Sarah has a great dashboard where you can go in and you can interrogate the data yourselves. So maybe get your teachers, and I can share the links for that with you all, and you can go in and see where the E. coli is in the water. And if you think about it this way, understanding how microbes are getting around in our waterways, having many hands do the work makes the data more shareable, right? So instead of just me doing it, imagine your whole class might be helping with that project. And then you could get all the data from all the rivers and all the streams. Many hands make light work. So that's what I would suggest. You can get involved as a citizen first, right? And then when you're in school and you're thinking about what you want to do in college, consider doing a degree in biology or water conservation or something like we have at Texas A&M. We have a water sciences, resources and technology program that you can do as an undergrad, and then potentially do a master's and everything else and stay with us. And if you come to Texas A&M, you'll get to work with me in the lab, and that would be awesome.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you telling students that, they too can have a voice in science. Middle school, high school students are part of this competition, and we could try to emphasize that we care about their opinion. And I love that they can actually be involved in real science by
Yeah.
providing data that's actually used by scientists like yourself. So my final question for you is, what other words of advice would you like to share with the SA Smart participants?
I would say the water problem in Texas and San Antonio in particular is critically important for every single one of us. So all of the talks you've been listening to over the course of the series have told you how you can get involved to conserve water, to save water. And one of the things I loved the most was from Greg Eckhart. I also listened because I did my homework, right? Greg Eckhart said, "It's only wastewater if you don't use it." And water is recyclable. It is a hugely important resource that many people around the world don't have. So every time you flush the toilet, right? Every time you flush the toilet, consider how much water is being wasted in that process. Every time you leave the tap running when you're brushing your teeth, every time you leave a shower running unnecessarily, it's all wasting water. And there's only so much water to go around. Fresh water is a limited resource. And so everything we do should be to save water for us and everybody else around the world. And don't forget, it's the creatures that live on the planet too. We're taking their water too. So all those creatures that live on the planet, they're with us on this planet together, and we should be saving water as best we can. So whatever you all can do, with solutions you can come up with, will save us all in the long run.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on SA Smart Career Chats. And who knows, in a few years, you might have some of these students in your class or joining your research team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.